You can also think about something that is a public policy question that we have, which is the tax liability. Very often, these sites are burdened by past, way overdue taxes, and sometimes they are 3 or 4 times the value of the property. You've got estimated cleanup costs, and you've got the assessment funding and the timeline to get these things done, and all of those contribute to that inverted value concept that we had in the beginning. Because how can economic development officials support efforts to remediate and redevelop these sites? And I think what's been going on is what needs to continue to go on, where regional organizations like this join with others across the state, across the country, and lobby for the public funding necessary to change the fate of these sites. Without that public funding, they're just not going to move. And the legislature has come to understand how some of the regulations stood in the way of redeveloping a lot of sites. And this past year, there was a modification to liability for developers of sites. And very often, this gets mixed, these issues get mixed with what's appropriate public posture towards environmental contamination. How clean is clean? What do you have to do on a given site? Who should be responsible? Why should the public pay for something that wasn't caused by all of us, but by an individual company? And many of those issues stall the progress on sites. I think we need to be practical about these. It's a legacy that we've inherited. Those sites created tremendous wealth and built the country. And they formed that basis for us today in our standard of living and our quality of life, that we need now to turn around and pick up some of that past and fix some of those things and move forward. A lot of times we didn't know what the consequences were of some of the things that we were producing. We didn't know about practices that could be harmful to the environment. So instead of us sitting in a frozen state or a state of blame and somewhat at times righteousness, we need to really turn around and just be practical about these. These sites are potentially lower cost to develop than greenfield sites. How could that be? Well, after you get through some of that front-end investment, and then some of them find out that it's not all that bad to clean up, you now can bring in some of the advantages of these sites over others. And what are those? They are along existing infrastructure. They're already served by roads. The utilities are already there. The taxpayers have already made that investment. So instead of building another place where you have to put in the roads, et cetera, and make that investment and create the burden of bonding in a town, you've already got something that you ought to consider on its net reinvestment, what it's going to cost you. And they tend to be available to public transportation very often, so you get into the ecological use of our resources and how are we treating our air and not adding to commuter miles. And they also tend very often to be near residential areas, and so you have people who can walk to work, you can build a greater neighborhood strength, and you've got advantages to this kind of smart growth, reuse of sites, infill development that the government is supporting in programs, engineering, funding, and in process. You can work a lot of these things through. So, brownfields aren't going to go away, and we really need to keep working at them. There are tremendous success stories. There are things that you've got here poised to be resolved, and by working together, I think you create the first of the tools that you need, and that is capacity and a dialogue around the sites.